I'm Tami McCarthy.
And I'm Becki Fleischer.
We're two soul sisters on the front lines of growth and transformation, getting real about it all.
You know, sometimes we're totally in our woo-woo groove, walking on light.
Yep. And other times, we lose our footing and end up tripping over those very same rays of sunshine.
That's woo-woo in the real world.
On this show, we're giving you an inside look at all the healing practices and mindfulness that we use and how we integrate them into our lives.
Yep, we're talking to interesting people who can help us along the way as we look at some of the woo and wild things that make us go,
We hope that you'll join us, living woo-woo in the real world.
Welcome back to Woo in the Real World. We're here on vacation in between Christmas and New Year's. We're on Zoom here. Hi, Tami.
Hi, Becki. Wow, I know. Well, we were just doing a little preamble about our holiday and catching up, and I hope everybody out there who's listening had a great holiday.
Yes.
And you know, it's a great time also to just check in with yourself energetically, right? We're around relatives, we're around exes, we're around our kids' friends, and maybe our kids too long, and
Too much together time.
still juggling, and visitors and guests, and and it takes a toll on a mama, that's for sure.
It does. That is a fact. Yeah. And a lot of those things also seep in together and weave together. And plus we're like in this weird time between Christmas and New Year where it's also like, what day is it and what hour? And
Yes, and I met up with a friend yesterday, so I had to take my son Luke to a friend's place in Chappaqua, and then I was meeting up with a friend in Katona, near you, which is why I was like, if you're at the bungalow. And anyway, but I did this crazy thing where I actually arrived a half an hour before I was supposed to meet my friend. And it was like a found half an hour, it's just like between when Luke needed to be somewhere, when I needed to be somewhere. And instead of like feeling like I had to fill up that time, it's like, you know what? I'm just going to park. I'm going to sit in my car. And I'm going to have this serene moment. And I'm just going to meditate for 20 minutes. And, that was different. That was fun. And it helped to just like ground my energy and make me more present. And, I had a fun night.
That's so good. That is so good. I love that. Like, grab the time where you can. And, we were chatting right before we got on before we hit record here for the episode. Yeah. I haven't really celebrated Christmas on Christmas Day in a really, really long time. Usually I'm with my family. My kids are Jewish and my ex-husband's Jewish. So we celebrate Hanukkah, which overlapped with Christmas this year. So very nice. And this year on Christmas, I woke up and my kids are asleep and I'm alone. And part of me was just like, I should be sad, that I'm not like, there's not more going on Christmas. And, now I really kind of do want a tree again and all the things.
Yeah.
But instead of kind of jumping into that, like I decided to do some yoga. I did yoga. I did my morning pages like I always do. I did my yoga. I did a great meditation. And then I just texted a friend and I was like, listen, it's freezing cold outside, but we're actually up in the Catskills where we know how to dress appropriately for the cold. So I was like, let's just layer up and go for a walk. And I'm so glad I did because we had the best walk. We talked the whole time. We were outside. It was gorgeous out. It was cold, but it was gorgeous. And it just really reset my mood. And it just made me also, then I also ended up having impromptu drinks with two friends. And I got back at the end of the day and I was like, actually, this may be the fullest I have felt on Christmas in a really long time because I just, like sometimes you have to remind yourself of like the love you have in your life and the people that are there for you and to call on them when you need a friend to go on a walk with you and to say, let's go. And to be reminded, which it was a good reminder for me of this past year of like how many awesome people there are in my life and how they have risen up to really support me and help me through hard times, hard years. So it ended up being a really great Christmas.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now we're launching off into 2023.
I know. I'm so
Woo!
ready for it. I'm ready for it.
I know. Yeah, it feels different.
It does.
Mhm.
It really does. And I'm a little nervous to say that because the last time I said this year feels really different. I feel a lot of energy coming into this year.
Uh-huh.
Was 2019, which was correct. I did feel a lot of energy coming in, and it almost snapped me right in two because it was very challenging energy. I just didn't know that that's what was coming. But
Mhm.
my astrologer told me that this energy coming into this year is very different, and it's good, and it's healing, and
Yeah.
so I'm like here for it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I definitely feel it. And talking about shifting, I mean, so we spent some time with Yuj The Archetype as part of this episode. And we each have had individual sessions with him now at this
Mhm.
point. We've worked with him in a group setting, and then he did this cacao ceremony for the two of us, which um, if anybody is curious about a cacao ceremony, you can watch it on YouTube. We're going to put the full ceremony there, but it is a heart opening. It opens the heart chakra practice or ceremony that Yuj took us through, which also included, a sound bath and sound healing in the style of his work, which is pretty amazing, right?
Mhm.
So we've done the Tibetan and the crystal sound bowls and those concerts that our friend Holly does. And we've done them in the barn and Conant Hall and various places. And those are amazing. But Yuj is different. So Yuj brings a lot to it, to the experience, and the healing modality using different types of instruments like drums. What is the long instrument that it's some
I
kind of flute, maybe? We should find out.
We should find out. I don't know what it is. I
Sure.
almost want to call it a didgeridoo, but I don't
Hmm.
think that's
A fun
accurate.
word. Didgeridoo.
It is a fun word. Maybe I just wanted to say that
Yeah.
didgeridoo.
But all of this is about, shifting energy
Mhm.
and really moving any kind of blocked energy along our 7 energy centers of the body, right?
Absolutely. And so yeah, we have had our own private ceremonies with him. And so we thought we have an interview for you, which is we're going to cut to that. So we recorded that separately, but we wanted to do this kind of preamble for everybody, um, just to kind of set the stage of our own experience of working with Yuj,
Mm,
because we talked to him about his background and what he does. So he'll give you more information about that, but just
perfect.
kind of
Yeah.
what our experiences were and how we walked away from those, and what they did for us. So just kind of in a little nutshell. I don't know if you want to go first, Tami, or you want me to jump in?
I kind of talked about my personal experience in the last episode, so maybe you should
That's
kick this
right.
one off.
That's right. You did. I forgot because you had just seen him when we
Oh,
recorded
yeah.
that
It
last
was
one.
like major root chakra
Hmm.
stuff
Hmm.
and shifting that happened that I continue to feel the benefits from and kind of just work on and integrate more deeply for
Yeah.
sure. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Well, I am still marinating on something you said in our last episode, which was the concept of subtle healing.
Mm,
You know, ever since you've said that, it's so spot on and so accurately describes most of the processes that I kind of go through personally.
mm,
Um, and I feel that way for with Yuj. It has been so layered. I mean, it's been like what, a month since we saw him. It was the end of November when I did my session with him.
yeah.
Um, and I will say, so the timing got a little messed up with our sessions, but I did my session with him. And just so that people, just like, we always want to give you guys the inside scoop of things, right? Um, when I was doing my session, like, honestly, I didn't know if I was falling asleep or if I was like going to a really deep meditative state. I couldn't really tell.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not sure that it matters actually, because I think what he's doing is what he's doing,
Right.
and you're to
I mean,
receive
your
or
nervous system was probably just so chilled out by the work he was doing, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I've also heard people say that if you fall asleep during meditation,
Mhm.
that's okay because that's what you needed, right? And someone had said once, like, we go we get anesthetized to have surgery, and we have surgery to heal something, right? And so sometimes, and that's like going to sleep is exactly what you need to let, spirit or whatever needs to come in to do its work. So
Yeah.
I don't really actually, I let myself off the hook now from now on. If I fall asleep, I'm like, I needed to fall asleep. That's what needed to happen. So we finished, and I actually had to like run to get my son from school. Like, hello, real world, smacking right up against my woo.
That's what we're talking about. Yes.
So we didn't really get a chance to debrief personally. And so Yuj was like, I'll send you some notes about kind of what I saw and what I worked on, and everything. And so I was like, okay, great. I really look forward to seeing the notes. I can't wait for the notes. And then, he got really busy, and then I got really busy, and it was just a couple weeks before I got the notes. But in the time between when I hadn't gotten the notes, I legit was like, you know what? I just need to unhook from needing the notes. I don't need the notes. Like, I just need to trust that whatever happened, happened. And I don't need his feedback, I guess. I need to just trust my process, and that it's going to play out the way it needs to play out. And what he saw and experienced is not important, apparently, or I don't need to know, or whatever. So I just felt this need to unhook. And then the most hysterical thing is when he sent me the notes were basically, I'm kind of like looking at them right here.
Yeah.
It's like he cleared a lot of attachments based on people, like people in my life. And like, basically it's like don't distract yourself with other people's opinion or other people's experience of you, or their opinion of you, or their experience with you. Like, that's theirs. And it was basically the exact thing that I had told myself before I got the notes from him, which was like, unhook from needing his information and
How
just
cool is that? Like,
I
that is,
know, right?
that is so cool.
Blew my mind. I was like, this is the craziest note that I've gotten. Because I had kind of gotten myself there. So clearly whatever he was doing, and he put a whole lot more in there, and there's a lot for me to unpack in there, which is actually super helpful.
Yeah.
But the fact that I had already started moving, like he clearly had shifted something in me. He had cleared some energy in me where I had already started kind of moving toward, I don't need this from him to be able to move forward in my healing. Like, I know I've got what it takes. And basically that's what he said. So it was like,
that's wild. That's wild. I mean, I love the synchronicity of that. I love that you had that experience. And, look, it's all about clearing and shifting and doing the inner work, right? No one can come along, and it's like, I have this little selenite wand here, right? It's like, I can't bring this and like, here, Becki, you're all right. I mean, it's a tool, right? But at the end of the day, it's like each of us has to do the inner work, right? And I'm laughing to myself because I literally saw I read something by like one of these spiritual teachers, like their social media feed was just like this great message. And I was just like, I can't even remember what the message was, because the very next screen was, what I'm basically saying is, like, your spiritual journey isn't just reading these memes, right?
Yeah, it's actually getting out there and doing, like,
yeah.
It's what happens when your spiritual journey comes smacking up against the real world. And like, how does that?
Totally. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think, people like you are just these incredible light workers that have these gifts that, for whatever reason and where you are on your path, I think we meet the people that are there to kind of show us the way on our journey, right? But at the same time, like, we have free will. It's our own choice, There's this guy too. I don't know if you've ever checked him out. His name's Kyle Cease.
I don't think so.
So he used, and he kind of still is, he was a professional comedian on, like, Comedy Central and whatever. And now he is, and I actually went to one of his things in New York. he does this thing called Evolving Out Loud. And he's a transformation kind of spiritual comedian now. And he's incredible, and his work is incredible. And you know, he kind of, I saw something that he posted the other day, which is he did this very funny video of you know, his wife wanted him to go to this gathering, and it was going to be spiritual people who were all like awakened and in this higher consciousness. And you know, and it's kind of what we talked about at Social Wellness, like back in October, right? And Yuj was part of that experience. It's just, you know, it's not about going in these groups. And with this particular spoof, it was about, well, that's a sign. Or did you see the way the bird, and we talk about these signs too, right? But then you could get so caught up in it that just like everything is a sign, right?
Right. And then you're paralyzed.
Right. You know, and his whole message was, okay, guys, okay, but your choices, your life, you know, and there was this list of, it's like, you are a factor here. And it's like, what are you going to do? You know? And that's what this real world thing is, right? It's like, we're dipping into the woo-woo, we're working on ourselves, we're empowering ourselves, but then we're also dealing with life.
Absolutely.
And it's like, and yeah, you want to deal with life. You want to live life to the fullest, right? So yeah, so Yuj is cool.
Yuj is very cool. And I'm excited for everybody to hear his interview and to check out the Cacao Ceremony if they want to get that bonus footage. That will just be on YouTube. So there's not really a good way to make that just a podcast.
Yeah, totally.
It's such a visual experience. So we just made that one for YouTube. So you can head over there at Woo Woo in the Real World.
Teaser. Yeah. Maybe we'll put a little visual in a teaser or something.
Yeah. Exactly. Sophia, make sure we get a teaser out for everybody on Instagram. I guess it's probably also a good time to let everybody know that we do put stuff out on our Instagrams, and you're at Calo Collective.
Yes.
I am at The In Tune Experience. And then we also have personal ones, but those are our kind of business ones. So you can always go there to see things and different highlights and stuff. If you're not following us there, you can keep up with us there and message us and let us know what you're liking.
Share and comment, so that, you know, we love the feedback. I mean, we've been getting some great feedback, which is amazing. And it's great to hear what's resonating. And I personally would invite people to just get in touch with us and let us know, what do you want to hear? What do you want to work on? What are you curious about that we can help you figure out?
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. I think if you want to slide in our DMs and let us know, we would love to explore stuff that you want us to explore. Or if there's something you experienced and you think we should experience it.
Yes.
Let us know that too. We're all
Share
about
the woo-woo with us. Oh my God, yes. That'd be so fun.
Great. So should we jump over to the interview with Yuj?
Let's do it.
Awesome.
Welcome back to Woo Woo in the Real World. I'm Becki Fleischer.
And I'm Tami McCarthy. And today we have a special guest with us. Yuj The Archetype is here. And I'm so excited to introduce you to everybody today.
Hello, everybody. How are you today?
Out in the real world.
In the real world.
So, Yuj, tell everybody. So, on the show, we talk about different healing modalities. And Becki and I had the chance to experience you together at an event we did called the Soulful Social at the end of October, which was amazing.
Totally amazing.
So, we introduced you that night as a sonic alchemist. So, let's talk about that a little bit. But before we get into that and what we did at that event and what you do in general, just tell everybody a little bit about yourself. You came here today from New York City, first of all.
Right. So I'm born and raised from Queens, multidisciplinary artist, visual arts, music has always been my first love. And it just kind of spiraled into other studies and practice of life, from anything from science to math to holistic health, as my adolescence just, carried me into that type of experience where, it's kind of condensed into these forms and practices with sound, with psyche, with somatics, with even now, with the past recent years, integrating into the medicine community with certain plant medicines for me to share and educate people on, as well as, it very much being tied with indigenous culture, which is very important these days in terms of revering it and understanding why certain types of colonialization is important to educate ourselves on how cultures are appropriated, because there's a lot of spiritual trends and spiritual wellness things that are really coming into pop culture, you could say, or like just in terms of conventional ways of coming together. So I like to educate people on these things, so however we integrate as people from all over the world, we're respecting each other's ways and understanding history and lineage of things. And I think that's the most important thing, is just respecting everyone's walk of life.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. So wait, let's start with your name first of all.
Yes.
So your name is Yuj, which is spelled Y-U-J.
Yes.
But it's an acronym, right?
It's also an acronym.
Okay. So tell folks the meaning of your name and how you came to be Yuj.
Okay, so just gonna let y'all know that given name is Eugene, and then around middle school it turned into Yuj, but the way I spelled it was Y-O-O-G-E. I also did graffiti a lot back then. So people looked at it and said Yogi. I'm like, no, it's Yuj. Or they're like, oh, Yogi the Bear. I'm like, no, it's Yuj. So that kind of went on for a while, and then I finally went to India around 2016, and I'm like falling asleep half in class, and my teacher's like, oh, there's another word for yoga. What is it? And she goes, oh, it's Yuj. So she writes it Y-U-J, and I just perk up, and I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, it means to unite, and it's really interesting because my name in Korean, I'm also Korean, and my name in English, they all have this essence and emphasis on good energy, things coming together well. So Yuj is just
How cool
like
is that?
another
That's very cool.
It's like a cookie trail for my soul, you know? Like when I came
Yes.
to Earth, like remember, and then Yuj just stuck. And once I embodied that, I realized that energy of unifying, good things coming together, harmony, is also in the spelling phonetically when we put it into an acronym. So it stands for Your Universal Journey. And then what that kind of entails is the whole archetype of the sacred mirror. And what makes a mirror supposedly sacred in this poetic way is that when you look into a mirror, you see yourself. But with a sacred mirror, you're seeing all parts of yourself, things beyond just your personal identification. You're seeing the divine within, because when something is sacred, it's honoring the divine. So I like to uphold that space of when people connect with me, when people reflect, that they can really tune into their own divinity, really tune into their own presence of infinity. So I like to uphold that in my presence with people. So that's a little bit more about my name, I guess.
Yeah, very cool.
More
I
than a
love
little
that.
bit.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's amazing. So the experience that we all shared together for the Soulful Social,
Right.
walk us through that in terms of using sound and helping to heal and clear the chakras, or kind of clean up your energy, right?
Yeah, so one of the go-to phrases or analogies I give to people is that everything has a voice. Like, we could talk about physically, you know, but there's also the psychological aspect of the voice, the inner dialogue in our head. And I'm sure we felt our mood change in certain rooms, or when you go into the forest or you sit by the water, your mood kind of changes, and that kind of brings like the poetry of that everything is speaking to you. So even in our inner world, inside our body, all of our cells are speaking to us, which means that if we can tune in and dial in on this communication happening, then we're becoming more present and participatory and attentive, most of all, on what's going on in our body. And that way we're becoming more open to what we define as an identity. And I think that's what makes people sick these days, is that we're very linear with our identity, when we're these very multidimensional beings with all these different nuances, and there's different chapters and there's different parts of our timeline. And what I mean by that is your adolescence, your childhood, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, it still lives within you habitually or cognitively, that it turns into a personality trait. So it's to say that you're not just one person, you're multiple beings coming together as one persona, multiple attitudes, multiple places, that it's like a room and you're having all these different types of like the 12 dwarves, you could say. And they all have like really epitomizing personalities, and they all come into the room, and that's how I view people in a way. So how that connects and correlates with my practice with sound is that when I have people in this meditative state and we start pronunciating and vocalizing certain core sounds like E, O, A, these may not sound arbitrary as we're familiar with like language, with maybe English, Korean, Italian, Chinese, but we all come equipped with the same tongue, the same jaw, these muscles. It's just based on geographical location that incubates a language over time. So I say all of this because when we're tuning into our bodies with sound, that means we're allowing things to connect on a level where it reinstates harmony. And we can only really allow ourselves to be in that state when we become present with something beyond our own identity. So having these sounds play in your body on a scientific level, certain intervals, rhythms, processions, pace, these things actually affect us, like house music compared to jazz music, it's compared to metal music compared to R&B. So if music can hit us like that, then how can we make that medicinal therapeutic? So that's something that I've studied deeply into the past like 7 to 8 years of my life. And I've brought that into curation with vocal toning, with drum therapy, being multidisciplinary artist in music. I've been fascinated with language, like I just spoke about here, and combining these languages and finding the core power and essence of why these languages are so powerful. So if I can give an example, like with I love Arabic. In the Quran, they've done scientific studies where just listening to someone speak the Quran lowers your heart rate, lowers a lot of stress, increases dopamine levels. Reading the Quran for a couple of weeks actually lowers your risk of heart disease by 3 times, and you actually get new neurosynaptic growth, meaning there's new brain cells, new connections happening in your brain when you're reading the Quran. So if we're not looking at this culturally and looking at this scientifically, then we're looking at these words vibrationally, which means certain words have a high frequency, or certain words have a nurturing frequency, or certain words have uplifting, harmonious, grounding. So these are things that I really look into, and this is going full circle to say everything has a voice and everything has a personality. So if we could speak that language, then we could also harness that into our own speech and our own essence. Does that answer your question?
It does, but it also brings so many more. You go first.
Well, I was fascinated with the whole like reading the Quran and how it's been scientifically proven to move those things. I'm sure that there are other texts and other things, modalities that do the same thing. But in your practice, like what exactly is it that you do? Because, you know, we talked about this on the show before. I've chanted the bija mantras for my chakras, and it is incredible what happens when you do that consistently, and the sound and the vibration and just the process of doing that. It definitely starts to move things inside of you. What is your process when you work with someone?
So I do something called energetic alignment sessions, or I even do private sessions where it's just more music based, but still based on harmonic resonance. And what we mean by harmonic resonance is what it exactly sounds like. We're reinstating the tone, the energetic frequency in our bodies. So we could find that really popular in the chakras, and how the chakras represent different personality traits, like I was mentioning before, and they're also pronounced and expressed with different types of phonetics and tones. It relaxes our vagus nerve, but also that resonates most in our stomach and in between our pelvic girdle. High tones, high frequency, chest voices, these things naturally resonate with the heart, the throat. And it's like exactly on the play on words. When I say head voice, you can imagine why it's called a head voice, because I'm using my head, the voice, the muscles in my neck and my head to pronunciate and express these tones. So when I do these sessions with people, I've had people tell me they have out-of-body experiences, they have relapses of trauma, or they have insights into things that they didn't really consider, or things they've suppressed or oppressed for a long time come up. But it's in a way where we're approaching it with consent, and we're approaching it with also a conscientious, meditative approach, where as we're building these sounds, you're allowing all these parts of your body to connect, and if you haven't felt that before, it feels overwhelmingly peaceful, as I've heard people say.
I mean, I remember, so I had a session with Yuj, a private session, and it was intense, and it was amazing.
We went through all these different sounds,
and we went
different
through
tones,
all
and
the different sounds, and I was feeling them, you know, all in my chakras in different ways. And so one of the things that Becki and I always talk about is how this stuff, A, how we process it, and B, how we integrate it into our lives, right? And so, you know, I had the session with you. It was amazing. I felt completely different after the session than when we started the session, right? And we even heard like ghosts or sounds or spirits or, you know, coming in, and, you know, that whole actual experience when it was happening was incredible.
And
right?
even weeks after you were
and then weeks after. So, but a lot of what came up in that session, and I could definitely feel it, was in my root chakra and in my sacral chakra. And then, you know, cut to just, you know, a couple weeks later, I'm taking my son to school. I drop him off at school, and I decide it's a really beautiful day, and his school is down by the water. So I decide I'm going to park the car, and I'm going to take a little walk. And I'm noticing as I'm walking, I'm definitely processing and remembering that experience that I had with you in the session. And I could feel myself welling up. I could feel things that just needed to be released. And then so I thought, okay, you know, this was awesome, but I'm also on a schedule because this is woo-woo in the real world. Yeah. And I'm going to hop in my car, and I got to get to the next thing, which, you know, probably was here, to the shop. And so I get in the car, I am at a red light, and I think to myself, oh my gosh. And before I could say that to myself, I'm sobbing uncontrollably. So I had to literally pull over, find a place to park, and just sobbing. And the vision that came up was that I was sitting there with my 4-year-old self, and I was just hugging her. I was just hugging her and saying I'm sorry, and, you know, I love you. And I wasn't thinking about any of this stuff. This was not my plan, but that's how we integrate. That's how you unlodged what was something that was just so foundational to my core, in my root chakra, and the foundation of my life, that you were able to bring that forward in a way that was very healing, because that needed to be released, and I needed to send that on, and I wasn't equipped to do that on my own, right? And here I am doing all these things, thinking that I'm healing, I'm evolved, I'm a high vibe person. Woo! But it's really messy work, and it's constant, and being open to it, I think, is something that I'm always learning about, because that also means, and it's not scary, but you'll have things that'll just creep up on you and surprise you, right? And it's different for every person. So thank you for that, because I felt a really profound shift after I realized, okay, is the sobbing done? And what do I have in my car? Because like now I look like a mess, and I need to like clean myself up. But it was really amazing. It was amazing. You know, and I've gone to sound baths, and I have worked with sound, but for some reason you took it to a much deeper level in a way that really got down there deep.
Yeah,
you know?
So like the energetic alignment session incorporates sound, but I'm also using something called pranic movement, where I'm directing energy through my hands, through my breath, and moving it with the sound. So the sound is amplifying the space, but my hands are navigating, moving it, as well as connecting with your auric field and connecting with my auric field to channel the messages that may be coming through. And that's what we did after with the decompression, where we talked about it. Yeah. And I like that you share that story. You didn't share that at all until now, but there's something I tell people. I say it's called an energetic alignment session for a reason, because in life things line up for you, but you have to show up. You can't be lazy. You have to pick yourself up and say, this is my opportunity, or I'm actually just shorting myself to grow. So I'm glad you actually honored that moment, even if you had things to do, you know, after the forest. You found that important, and I'm glad you did that for yourself.
Thanks.
Yeah. And I was going to say, when you were talking about like how the sounds can move and they start to unlock things, I mean, and you followed up perfectly, which is a lot of times it's things you don't even know. You don't even know it's there. And that's the amazing thing when you work with different practitioners or in different modalities, different things kind of get in. And, you know, maybe one softened it up, and then the next one can kind of like get in there and land. So it's kind of all encompassing. But giving yourself that time is so important and hard, because, like you said, you were driving and on your way somewhere. And the funny thing is, Tami and I were talking, like, right, I don't know if it was the day that happened or the day after that happened, but I had one day where I had 7 minutes exactly, where I was like, I'm just going to do a quick little meditation. I had 7 minutes. It's better than nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I did 4 minutes of it was a song. And so I literally had 3 minutes left. And I had this 3-minute meditation that felt like 30 minutes, where I had a very similar thing, where I ended up going back to like 26-year-old me. And it was one of those things where you're just like, I didn't even know that there was something wounded there. Like, I didn't even know 26-year-old me was sitting off in the corner feeling like, so it's so interesting how these different things can come in and how they incorporate and how they integrate in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, as mystical and abstract our experience may sound, it's, again, when you wake up after these ceremonies or these sessions, it affects the people around you, the way you share beauty, kindness, and also your story that's filled with grief and triumph and tribulations. And one of the most important things I share in ceremony is that to lean into that unknown, and you want to revolutionize your story. And how can we do that if we don't know how to express it in a way that feels righteous to us? Yeah,
for sure.
And righteous doesn't always mean it's pretty or light or easy. It just means like you're doing justice to your human being, to this body you've been given.
Right. Yeah.
And even in like mundane settings like box offices or like being a clerk or a deli, everyone has a story.
Everybody does. Just as like a short little build on that, but in kind of a non-spiritual way. So, and only because it's fresh in my head. On Netflix right now, I think it just came out as of yesterday, but I had made a note that I wanted to watch it, so I had some time last night, and Jonah Hill made this documentary on his therapist. His therapist is this guy by the name of Phil Stutz. So the documentary is called Stutz. So I highly recommend everybody going and checking out this documentary, because Jonah felt very compelled to bring the tools of Dr. Stutz out into the world, right? And it's much like these tools that we're talking about. We happen to be talking about sound and vibration as a way of tackling trauma and emotion and evolving and growing, right? And so Dr. Stutz has these tools, and it's a fascinating story and relationship between these two that I will not spoil. But based on what you had said, one of the tools is called Part X. Everybody has a Part X. And Part X is, regardless of who we are, where we come from, what we're dealing with, we all have pain, uncertainty, and constant work. Those are the three components of Part X. And that is basically also our ego coming into play whenever we want to break through something, or we want to evolve to a different state or vibe or growth. Part X is always going to deal with some pain, some uncertainty, and we have to work on it. And I just thought that was so interesting. It was like a whole other way to frame it, particularly if somebody's not spiritual, or starting out on this spiritual journey, or aware of it, right? So I definitely check it out. It's a really interesting story, and his tools are amazing because they just correlate so much to a lot of our spiritual toolkit as well, just like a different terminology. Because Jonah Hill, I don't know if you know, but he was incredibly overweight.
And the Hollywood industry wanted to keep him that way for the image of him as a casting actor. And it really
traumatized him.
Really bad.
Growing up in Hollywood.
He wanted to lose weight, and
Yeah.
they're like, if you're gonna lose money, we're not gonna hire you.
Oh my gosh.
It's bad. It's terrible.
Yeah. So, and then just a lot of personal trauma, on top of that. So it was really fascinating. So Part X, we've all got it.
Yeah, I think that's really important that you mentioned that, and that's why with the session we did a decompression.
Yes.
Having a narrative to work with, you just felt all these visuals, memories, sensations, and you may not be able to articulate it, but having someone to show you how to let go.
Right.
There's a whole thing where people say, trust the medicine, but like, what if you don't know how to trust the medicine?
Right.
You need someone to hold your hand and be like, I know what you're going through, and let me talk you through it. Let's do something a little more logical that actually feels grounded in your familiarity and your associations.
Right.
Yeah,
I appreciated when you said maybe people aren't aware of their spirituality. And I think that's kind of the issue with a lot of people is that I know for myself, like, you get so stuck kind of in your mind, you know, for work. I mean, Jonah Hill's a great example, you know, like I have to do this, 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 and this to make a living, to make it in this world, to, and then there comes a moment where you're just kind of like, something is off, you know, and for some people that switch to let the heart kind of lead again and let the mind just be the little machine that it is and not be the boss, right? But to let the heart lead again can be very difficult. So I'm curious, like what, I was going to ask you, who comes to you to work with you? Like what are people looking for, or where are they on their spiritual journey, like on the spectrum of things? Like, are they pretty evolved? Because I can imagine some people listening to this might be like, what in the world are they talking about? You know, like vibrations and things are moving in your body and I don't understand that. And that sounds so completely woo-woo. And that would have been me, you know, a good 10 years ago, I would have been like, this is nuts. You know, this makes no logical sense. Right. So I'm just curious, like, who comes to work with you, and where are they on that kind of 0 to 10 spectrum of like 0, I think this is absolutely crazy, and 10 is like, I'm all in. Like, I totally get it.
Most of the time, actually, most people don't tell me their intention. I even asked them, like, what's your intentions? Like, I'm just here to receive. I'm like, all right, whatever that means for you, I'm going to figure that out in the session.
Okay.
Like, for example, to give you one extreme case, I've had a person, he experienced me for my Soundscape meditation, and I was talking the same spiel I'm talking to you guys. And he's like, I want to do a session with you. And he told me he was going through chemotherapy, and he's actually in the process of getting rid of this malicious tumor. He didn't tell me where it was, and he didn't tell me how severe it was either. But during the session, I scan his body with my hands as I'm breathing and doing some tones, and I could feel his fire on my hands as I'm reaching over his right side of his torso where his liver is, his kidney. And I just hold that space, and I'm just really focused on that. I'm like, that's probably where the tumor is. He gets up and we speak about it, and I ask him, like, can I ask you where it is? And he says, right here. And he didn't tell me at all. He comes back the next week after doing chemo, and he says that the doctors told him there was a significant rate of decompression happening with his tumor, basically meaning it got much smaller than what they expected in terms of what regular chemo does. And the doctors even told him, like, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I haven't seen him since.
That's amazing.
And I'm pretty sure as well. And from that to people wanting to visit their deceased relatives, so outer body experiences. People who, maybe you guys watching, and you guys also have heard of ayahuasca. So people have had relapses of their ayahuasca experience with me just by me singing and like breathing with them, or even like psychological things with depression, grief, obsessive fixations on the past or the future, anxiety. So from those things, which is considered pretty normal, I guess, in terms of what society's dealing with, to very out there stuff like outer body experiences, ayahuasca relapse experiences, to meeting your guides, to having your third eye activated. So I've been requested and also experienced a lot with people in that way. So the energetic alignment sessions, this is my own curation that I've just been refining since I was probably 18, and I was really, really a solace person, very much a hermit in that time, and that would be very surprising at 18. You think we were like, at that age you want to explore the world, you know, boy meets world kind of thing, but that wasn't really me. I was just in my own world, pretty satisfied and fulfilled, and doing a lot of the studies that I was mentioning earlier, to the point where I became more social, and something was definitely pulling me to be more social. And as soon as I went to like grassroots-based events or community events, things just fast forwarded us like very, very quickly in terms of going to events to now do sound healing. I'd never done sound healing before, so how do I even do that? But I just showed up and did it. And I'm like, okay, I got a little experience in my own reference. Okay, let's make this more structured. Okay, now there's marketing involved and all this stuff. So it just kind of grew on its own, but particularly with the sessions I'm mentioning, I felt very confident to curate it probably after like 5 years of just doing toning, learning about the body's meridian, learning about quantum physics, learning about a little bit of neuroscience, psychology, all these things that, cymatics, you name it. Like, just
but also you had mentioned living in India, so I think you had said that was a profound experience for you as well, where you learned a lot.
Yeah, I was already in depth with my yogic literature and yogic practice, but to go to India and to actually ground it into an actual structured way and live a lifestyle where it came from, like feeling the land that literally has curated this for their history and their culture.
Yeah.
I felt that, and just it was an amazing experience just to be around so much knowledge and to be around the place that literally lives and breathes this every single day, no matter where you go.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
temples everywhere, chanting everywhere. You know, yoga happening every morning, and there's all these different places just literally living it 24/7.
Yeah. The complete opposite of the American lifestyle.
Yeah, but it's happening.
We're like, how can we fit that 7 minutes in?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I have 7 minutes.
That 7 minutes
I'm
is better
driving.
than
I have to pull
nothing.
over and process and integrate now.
Better than nothing.
Well, Yuj, I feel like we could talk to him forever,
All day.
right?
Yes,
I know.
I have a million more
but we
questions.
actually have an experience planned
Right. Yes.
that we're going to share with our community as well. So thank you so much for chatting all things Yuj and
Thank you.
sound and energy with us. And we'll see you around on the flip side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you guys have any questions, you can definitely find me on Instagram, Yuj.Archetype, or look on
We'll
my
link to all of
website,
that for sure.
YujTheArchetype.com, and I'm very friendly online, so hit me up.
Thank you, Yuj.
Thank you.
All
Pleasure.
right.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. And I hope, and we invite you to slide on over to YouTube. That's Woo Woo in the Real World on YouTube, and check out the Cacao Ceremony if you're curious.
See you next time.
See you next time.